We're joined at the hip, aren't we?
Literally, almost. Yeah.
I knew from the moment that I saw him when he was born that we were going to be close. But how he come to be with it is an accident, because I thought his mum would recover from the type of life that she had lived, and I thought that we would move, she would move in with me. I had a big home, plenty of room for her and everything, but the call of the wild to the type of life that and people didn't leave her alone. And so, being a young girl, she drifted off. So we come together more not by accident, well, maybe an accident, but I didn't mean that I hadn't considered rearing a child at 70 odd years of age, and I was a single man, and my wife was gone, and I was busy in my company. I was all company oriented, and suddenly I found that there's another life out there, and that is this little baby that used to squawk and do things in its diaper and that I hadn't been used to doing, because I came out of a chauvinistic world.
This is 4 generations. This is myself at 10 months old. This is my daughter at about 8 months old. This is my granddaughter, Shelley, at 6 months old. And this is Lauren at 2 months old. Oh, 3 months old, excuse me. So it's 4 generations of us. All starting to fade now.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you and Kay came to be raising your great-granddaughter Lauren?
We were started out babysitting actually at first. Her mother was a teenager, 16, and she was still finishing school. Her mother and father were working. That's Shelley, our granddaughter. And Lauren was a very fussy baby, and so she needed lots of attention. And so at first we would bring her over here and then take her back. But as the year progressed on, we finally said it'd be better if she stayed here and slept, so she wasn't being shuffled from pillar to post sort of thing. And we finally realized that as her mother finished school and started working, that she wasn't having enough contact with her daughter. So we set Shelley up for a while in a rental, in a basement suite. But she just had never really bonded with the child when she had it. And she always felt uncomfortable. And anytime she did have her, then she would always be phoning either her mother or us and saying, "Can you come and take Lauren? She's upset," and whatever. So we finally decided that we would keep her here.
I'd still do it all over again, because she deserves to have a good home and a family, whereas she didn't have that. Everybody walked away from her, and we are the only ones that stepped up to the plate to take her on.
Great. We took a lot to get us here.
Yes. It's been a day already.
We are.
My daughter has always kind of flirted with drugs. When she became pregnant, I didn't realize that how much of that was serious, because she had not been living in Vancouver up until the time she got pregnant. And she actually came back to Vancouver to get an abortion, and decided in the midst of planning that she wanted to have this child. The crisis was having to recognize that my daughter had a drug addiction and what that was. So then suddenly I'm not only taking care of this baby who's not okay, like she was not okay, I'm having to read up about drugs. I'm learning more about drugs than I'd ever had to learn before. And it was freaking me out because all of that is not a good story. There's the treatment success rate for the drugs she was using was 3 to 5%.
My daughter and her husband were doing drugs, and the ministry apprehended the children, and I wouldn't let them go into foster care, so I was it, and they've been with me ever since.
Hi Conrad, thanks for agreeing to share your story about how you came to be raised by your grandparents. Can you tell me a little bit about that, how you came to be raised by your grandparents?
So this is me, probably, I don't know, 7, 8 months old, still living with my parents, and pretty much, I'd say pretty much between the time that this picture was taken and early in 1977, I made the transition between living with my parents and having my grandparents take full custody of me. And this is a picture of the awkward teenage years. So I think this was grade 10. This is my grandfather and I. Didn't get to see him in a tie too often, but he dressed up nice when the occasion called for it. My mom, who I've had a relationship with my entire life, says that was the most difficult decision that she's ever had to make. And I also believe it was very difficult for my grandparents too.
You've had a couple of opportunities to be part of visits to the legislature. Is there anything that stands out for you in those visits or from those visits?
To tell you the truth, I wasn't very impressed with their acceptance of our grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
You're a young grandmother, so people probably make assumptions that you are the parent.
Yeah,
right?
I moved here in November of 2011. By June of 2012, June 2nd, we had Riley. Riley was in foster care for for a year exactly, and my daughter had gotten him back in February of 2012. And when he was in foster care, I was fighting to get him, but I was hitting roadblocks everywhere I turned. In the end, my end decision was to leave the area, my job, in order to distance myself from the situation, because it was just an ugly, ugly situation. A lot of people assume that I grew up in foster care because I was First Nations. A lot of people assume that I grew up in foster care or my mom was the way she was because she did drugs or drank. This is where the judging comes in. Don't assume we're judged because you just don't know until you actually hear the story. I wasn't in foster care because I was a bad teenager or a bad child. Everybody has their own reasons, and I guess that really, it still bothers me to this day that people just automatically assume.
Once I got interim custody, I now was locked into an adversarial court system that pitted me against my daughter. So the ministry abdicated their responsibility of actually apprehending this child and placing her with me. They put me in the position of doing their job, and they destroyed whatever relationship I had with my daughter. It's never been the same since then.
And now you got to cut it through the middle.
I know.
You do? Okay. That's good. Can you get it? That's still frozen. Some of the people in the ministry are great. Some of them I don't think a terrible lot of. I'm sorry to have to say that. However, it depends on, I think, how they're being trained, and it also depends on, and it's the big word, compassion. They can't have a lot of compassion. But I don't think we maybe should discuss this, but I had to go to court to get him, and on a few occasions, and eventually the judge awarded him to me, and he was a little taken back that the ministry weren't readily accepting me as someone that could rear him. I've read children before, and I don't have a history, I don't have a police record, I don't have all the things that would be an alert to them.
In the end of having to go to court, I ended up with a bill of $12,000, a legal bill. So the ministry encouraged me to do this thing, and the moment they did it, they closed the file. The moment I had Abby as in my custody, her file closed. So her mother continued to get services. So her mother got counseling, her mother got her methadone, she got treatment programs, she got her shelter and her medical and her food paid for, and all of that stuff. Her granddaughter, my granddaughter, her child, was cut off completely. So there were no services for her, there was no counseling for her, her daycare stopped almost immediately, her medical stopped. They literally said she's not in danger, we closed the file, that's it. So when we went to court, and I had to go to court, the fact that she was drug addict was, even though she'd been through the ministry, they had investigated her, they were about to apprehend this child, they had drug tests that showed she was a drug addict, she'd been to treatment, etc., etc., etc. By the time I got to court, it was now an allegation. It was no longer a fact. And so to prove this, I had to pay for a drug test, and to get supervision, because I couldn't have her just take this child, I had to pay for supervision. I had to arrange for and pay for supervision of her visits. So not only the $12,000, but the ministry simply abdicated all responsibility for this child at that point.
Going to pretend anything, and then yeah, we got plates. We're good.
Oh, there's only three of us.
Where's
Smoking.
She just went to have
She'll be back.
She'll be back.
So how long have you had your grandkids?
Since 2000, 2001. That's when I got custody.
12 years.
Yeah, it's a long time. I tell them all the time.
And look at you.
You have created all these gray hairs.
Didn't have one when it started, right?
Oh yeah, I did. Can't blame it all on them.
And you're on your own as well, right?
Yeah, I'm divorced, so I've been doing it by myself, totally.
I think that's incredible.
Yes.
Oh, that's what you get when you're stubborn, right?
When my granddaughter was 1, social services started pressuring me to look at going for sole custody. And they didn't talk to me about any other options. I didn't ask about other options. And my friend Laura, you're doing it in a different way, so she does get some money because she's not gone for sole custody. And they did promise me, I said, well, what about respite? Oh, we'll help you with respite. And will I get some money to help? Oh, yes, you will. And then when I actually got sole custody, oh no, you don't get any money, I'm sorry. And can you help me with respite? Oh, sorry, we can't help you. And so for me at that point, I just felt totally alone because I didn't know about grandparents raising children. And it was like, here I am.
When I got somebody to help me, a social worker to help me and open up my eyes about, well, don't you know about this? Don't you know about that? And, no. So
they maybe don't necessarily tell you automatically, but when you push a little?
Yeah, well, because I had to break down. I broke down. It's a scary thing.
The last straw that sort of really made me cynical was them grandfathering us with the CMHC who was a child in the home of a relative? Yes. Yeah. And not giving us any more funding, and you just can't raise a child on $400 a month. It was interesting to see, but I was not impressed with it at all, really. I haven't really seen any abrupt change. The only thing I've seen is there's been an increase in grandparents raising grandchildren.
Back to my home, I dare not go, for if I do, my mother will say, did you see Will with polka dot tail down by the bay, down by the
Parent Support Services helps us out. They're part of our community that we've built up over the years. If we weren't able to come to Galliano, the kids wouldn't get a holiday. I wouldn't get those much needed 20 minutes to myself. Bless you. It's something that means more than anything. When you're working and you have kids and you have life happening around you, and you struggle to get out for a picnic on the weekends, coming here for a few days, you get to relax, you get to be with other grandparents. The kids get to see that they're not the only ones in this position. It's nice when the kids go back to school and all the other kids say, oh, we went here for a holiday, we went there for a holiday. And my kids go, we went to Galliano and we had so much fun. And we got to go pick up starfish, and we got to do this, and we got to do that. And we got to see all our friends that we saw last year. This is our 4th year coming here. 2-day trips and now 2 overnight trips.
And then the children are finished school 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm ready for a nap, and I can't have a nap. Now it's time to start getting dinner ready, and after dinner you got to pack lunches for tomorrow. That's the hard part, because I am so exhausted that I can't wait to get into bed.
My daughter suffers from depression and anxiety, and having kids so close together postpartum really took it out of her. She just couldn't cope. Her husband got involved in drugs, and her depression just kept getting worse and worse and worse. It finally came down to the point where we knew that the kids weren't going to be reunited with the parents. And I had to make a decision on how many kids I was going to take, because I couldn't take 6. And which ones to take. Before I had them, I saw a backpack and a plane ticket in my future. And now I see a minivan and a diaper bag.
I think it's because I can't stop. You know, if I just give up, then I'll feel as old as I look anyway. The children keep you going.
I think she likes it here because she has a bunch of friends here that are her own age. Back at our house, there's only a couple people that are her age.
But one thing we noticed with the school, the other mothers weren't very accepting of us. We didn't get to socialize with them, or, we were standing around waiting for the kids to come out of school or whatever. They didn't talk to us, or like they did with the other mothers. Yeah. Because we were that much older, so, and even the teachers, we had a hard time getting the teachers to accept, that we were the sole guardian of this child. And so, you talk to us, don't look for a parent, we are the parent. Most of the grandparents had that complaint when their children first started school.
Right.
Because the teachers just weren't used to dealing with older people raising children. They were just used to having the youngsters with their young parents.
That's a huge part of it. You do get isolated because the friends in your age group who aren't doing it, all of a sudden you're not in their social circle anymore. You almost feel like you're just in this total limbo.
I agree.
Until you meet like other grandparents like yourself, and you'll be able to talk about things that are common to you, and you can laugh about them.
People stop calling. Finding a babysitter is very difficult. I used to be able to call up any girlfriend and say, oh, can my kids spend the night with your kids? Do you want to go out and do this or that? I don't have that anymore. The isolation is, until you create a group around you, you have to create a community, build a whole new community around you, around your kids, and that's important. We've worked really, really hard to create an extended family.
So one thing I really have to highlight about kinship care providers and grandparents raising grandchildren is the ripple effect it has on society. One child raised in a loving kinship care home with a solid foundation, a sense of community and connection with family can make a huge impact on society. About once a week when I'm out in the community with Conrad, there's a child or a young adult that thanks him for his work as a teacher or as a counselor for what he did to help that youth. All of the ripple effect from one child raised in a kinship care home wouldn't exist if grandparents weren't supported, and they're not supported well enough. There needs to be more money and more respite care for grandparents. Programs like Parent Support Services, Advocacy Line for grandparents, so they can learn to navigate how to get financial assistance, what little financial assistance actually is.
I would push hard to keep the family group together, whether it be sisters or brothers taking on other children, whether it be grandfathers and grandmothers. And I'm sad at the system because financially, a lot of people would love to have their grandchildren, but I've been to various meetings of grandparents raising grandchildren and to various, and I've got to know a few of them. Some of them still call me, and I'm not a counsellor in any way, but a lot of them have had to give the child up because they're on a pension, and the pension doesn't support another child. And when one of the pair die, either the male or the grandmother or the grandfather, then they're back on a single pension, and the little bit of child in a relative's home, which is only $300 and something a month, I used to spend $300 a month on his tinned food pretty well when he was a baby. So it nowhere near covers, particularly for not everyone was in business like I was. So I've used up a lot of life savings. I've spent over $100,000 in the last 6 years out of my savings so that we can live a little better life. Now that's my choice, but for people that have retired, anyway, you're going to go and earn all that back for us, aren't you? But for people that are retired, there is not enough money. Whoever's got hold of the purse strings, for goodness sakes, let go of it a bit and let some money flow to the right people. That's a mouthful. All bits of everything.